And it looks like we are recording. Hooray! Hello, everybody. Here we are with the amazing Zach Stout. Who knew? Oh my goodness. So Zach and I met a number of years ago. I think it was before either one of us had a channel.
Oh,
Yeah, we met through a Facebook men's crochet and knitting group, I think, and just started up an acquaintance there. I'm sad that we have never met in person, but such is life. Yeah,
I know. I don't get a whole lot of in-person yarn relationships.
yeah, exactly. I stop me because I will make it all about me if you give me half a chance. But I was just going to say that I'm going to go to a men's fiber retreat in the fall.
That
I'm
sounds
really
like fun. I've always wanted to go to one of those, but they're always so far away from me.
There's one in Black Mountain, North Carolina. I think it's in November.
Okay. And I'm
There's
really horrible with geography, so I'm not sure how far North Carolina is from Arkansas.
It's
Uh,
a lot closer than Albany, New York. I'll tell you that.
yeah, and I know there's one that takes place in like Washington and Seattle area. And so it's like clear across the country. So
Yeah, that's a bit of a schlep.
yeah, not a lot happens in Arkansas, Texas area, which is where I'm at.
Well, I think wherever you are, it's pretty exciting. Um,
Hopefully.
so, but actually, in the time that I have known you, you have just shot into stardom as a YouTube star, as a designer, as a an influencer,
Ooh,
and also in other circles,
all
and
right.
also in real life, you are a mental health professional.
Mhm.
Is it this month or last month? It was Mental Health Awareness Month.
In May.
May,
Last month.
okay. I think every month should be Mental Health Awareness Month.
I agree.
Um, so, because believe you me, I'm aware of my mental health every month.
Me
Um,
too. Same. It's
yeah,
like slapping me in the face every day whenever I go to work. So.
and I've actually been rather open about some of my struggles, particularly this year, this winter. I call it my winter of discontent.
Mhm.
Um, so let's talk about you. How long have you been doing yarn?
Let's see. I started crocheting in 20s at the end of 2016. So it's been about 4.5 years. I think it was like October, November. Yeah, 2016. Because it was before my
Mhm.
first niece was born, because that's why I started.
Oh, you started because you wanted to make something for her?
My sister actually contacted me and asked me about making a baby blanket for her daughter, but nobody in our family was really crafty in that kind of way. But she knew that I was pretty crafty in other areas, but that I was also willing to try new things so that I could, learn. So I got some yarn and I got on YouTube and I watched some tutorials and I made a baby blanket for my very first niece. Her name is Kinsley. And I just never stopped.
And I think that's about the time that we met. And I know
Hmm.
that's about the same time that I picked up the hook. And, there are tremendous resources on YouTube for
Yeah,
learning.
it was fantastic. It was like this whole world that I had never even like heard of or seen before. And that's when I think I started trying to venture out, like on Facebook with the groups and on YouTube with the podcasts and all that, just to try to get to know more people that were doing that. Because I knew nobody that knit or crochet before I started that. And so it was very interesting to see like how large this world is. So it was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's really my experience too.
Mhm.
Although actually I grew up with it because, you know, both grandmothers and my mother, they all knit and crocheted. And it was my grandmother who taught me when I was a kid, but then I put it aside and picked it up. Oh, well, it was in 2016, I would have to say about this. It was in early 2016 though, and you said you picked it up in late 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
but it
Denise was
actually,
born in January of 17.
mm-hmm.
So I knew it was right around towards the end of that year.
Cool, cool. And wow, what you have accomplished since then.
Oh gosh, it's kind of crazy looking back to see all the different things that I've done and that I've worked on. I really kind of pushed myself after I started learning because I just wanted to know so much about it, that I don't know. It was kind of like I'm all in. Whenever I really get into something, I'm like fully committed to it. So I was crocheting every day for hours a day, learning new stitches and learning about yarns and watching
Mm-hmm.
podcasts and, figuring out how to try to read patterns. And I remember that whole thing. It was a mess. But yeah, I was like fully immersed. As soon as I realized that this is really cool and it actually helped me, manage a lot of my anxiety that I was feeling, I was like, okay, I want to know more about this.
Actually, since you bring that up, I have talked to a lot of people, especially men,
Hmm.
who have shared how crochet or knitting or both are really healing practices or meditative or prayerful even
Hmm.
in in their own processes. I mean, you know, we were talking about, I don't recall whether I had hit the record button before or after, but we were talking about Josh of Combat Crochet, who
Hmm.
um, found it immensely helpful as he was dealing with his own PTSD
Hmm.
issues, and now he helps other people, his own brothers, he calls them, fellow combat veterans with their
Hmm.
PTSD issues. Listen to me. Um, um, PTSD issues with by helping them to learn that, just as you know, he'll be the first to tell you he's not a professional, but he just teaches this.
Hmm.
It's sort of like the 12-step model, where it's not like, I'm not here to give you advice, I'm here to tell you what works for me.
Hmm. I
And
think
it
it's
works for him, and it has worked for people he has helped.
yes, I love that. I think he's done so much for the community.
Mm-hmm.
Starting to see him everywhere, and it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I remember whenever he first started, with his YouTube channel, we actually did a Cal crochet along together,
Oh, I didn't
years
know that. I think that's great.
years ago. I think that was probably in 2018. It was the same year that I started my podcast. Um, was that 18? Yeah, that was 18. Okay. Uh, but we did that. And so I got to know him, through that process. But just watching everything that he's done and how vocal he's been about how much it's helped him. And then, the TikTok that has been going on. And he's got, videos that getting thousands and thousands of views. And, I
Uh,
saw that recently he was in an ad for Michael's. And I think it's
yes,
fantastic
exactly.
because
Yeah.
he's bringing awareness to so many things that need awareness brought to it. And he's showing that men can really dominate in this type of industry. I think it's really cool.
I'm not sure I like the word dominate, but I know what you mean to
Yeah,
say.
it's
Um,
it's neat the way that he's able to, I guess, kind of take it on and,
mhm.
make it something that is just going against the grain for what's the norm.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, so many of us were all about subverting the dominant paradigm of,
Mhm.
you know, what is supposed to be, whatever that is. Um, so yeah, but you know, since you have started your own social media presence with your YouTube channel, what you call your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
it has grown hugely. You have a huge public, and you have, and they call you an influencer
An
now,
influencer.
and you
Totally.
have yarn manufacturers and distributors reaching out to you, and you have your own designs going out there. So that is tremendous. And on top of that, outside of yarn, you've also been accomplishing great things too.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's definitely very interesting because if you would have told me all of that 4 years ago, whenever I was just starting and learning how to crochet by watching, tutorials on YouTube, I would have never imagined that this is the position that I would be in or the point that I would be at as far as that journey is concerned. So it's really kind of cool to see the progress. Um, it just seems like it's happened like overnight. Um, I don't know. I've been really blessed with the support that I've gotten. I know that when I first started, I really bugged a lot of people about learning different things and
Mhm.
interacting with them and, asking a ton of questions about things like the crochet tutorials and YouTube podcasts and, all the different things about social media and getting in touch with people and learning about this whole kind of like system. And yeah, like I said, whenever I decide to do something, I just want to go like full in and learn as much about it as possible. And so I feel like I try to do that in this area.
Yeah. I think we've both benefited from attention from some of the big names.
Hmm.
Although you've been doing it a lot longer than I have. I only started for all practical purposes last October.
Hmm.
Um, but we both know Crystal Bag a Day,
Hmm.
and of
She was
course,
fantastic as far as helping, especially helping me like grow my channel. I owe a lot of, I guess, my YouTube success to her. I remember watching. She was doing a live, and this was probably a year and a half or so ago. She was doing a live, and I commented something on it, and I heard her say, "Oh, Zach Stout is here. I watch your channel." Which was like mind blowing to me because at that point she had something close to like 500,000 followers on YouTube or subscribers on YouTube. My channel was at like 1,000 or 1,500. Like I was about a year in, and I was like, oh my god, like this is ridiculous. But as soon as she said that, everybody that was watching her live, it's like I got an influx of subscribers, and I remember I gained like 700 or 800 in like a 24-hour period, and it was like mind blowing to me how fast something like that could happen, and then it just kind of started gaining momentum from there. But I know she really put me out there with that huge audience that she had, and so that helped me a lot. I'm super grateful for
yeah,
that. So,
I had the same experience. I was
hmm.
doing a live stream, and she visited,
Hmm.
and at that point, I was just trying to reach 750,
Hmm.
and so during the live stream, she went to her own community tab, posted something about me. Within that live stream, I think I gained like a few hundred people.
It's
And
amazing.
then, like
So
within a
cool.
week, I had 500 people. It was amazing.
Yeah, I remember
And
starting this channel or my YouTube channel and saying, I think it would be really cool if I hit 1,000. And I remember posting videos. I was posting every couple of weeks, and my first 1,000 it took me almost a solid year to hit 1,000.
mm,
Um, and I was like, nobody is going to watch a grown man sit on YouTube talk about yarn and crochet. And I was like, I'm never going to get 1,000 followers. Like, this is ridiculous. Because I remember whenever I started, I was looking and trying to find all the different men that were doing things like YouTube podcasts. And at the time, there was only like two or three that I could even find. And so I was like, okay, it's not like a very big thing. Like, I don't know if a lot of people are going to watch this, but I did it anyway and I stuck with it. I'm really glad that I did, because that's where I gained a lot of my friends and support from. Because, like I said, I'm in South Arkansas. I don't know. I still do not have in-person friends that knit or crochet. All of my like yarn friends are all online. I've been fortunate enough to meet a couple of them, so that's nice. But YouTube was really a way for me to just meet people in the community, because I'm a social person. I'm like, I want to know people. I want to talk to people about what it is that is going on. My husband doesn't knit or crochet, and so I couldn't sit there and talk to him about it. I wanted somebody that was going to be as excited about it as I was, and I wasn't going to annoy.
I
So.
remember, I think it was what, a year and a half ago, when about the time the pandemic hit, there was supposed to be a Crochet Guild of America conference in Dallas. And at that time, I was in Dallas. And if I recall correctly, you were planning to come, and I was so excited to meet
Yes,
you at that time. But
I'm
then it was
really.
canceled, and then various things happened to me, and I wound up back in Wilmington. But then again, about Crystal, this was still long before I started my channel. She noticed my absence when I was sick for quite some time. She noticed my absence and mentioned it.
She's very sweet. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I'll edit that out. Or maybe not. But yeah, and so many other people have been so supportive. I know that you have had the same thing. Do you know Fiber Spider?
Yes, I saw. Well, I followed his channel a lot. Him and Crystal were definitely like those hard hitting like YouTube channels that you see whenever, I think anybody who goes to YouTube to learn about knitting or crochet, even though I think they both just crochet. I don't know if
They both do. Although Craig has started knitting and now he's also spinning.
Okay, yeah. But I know if you're going anywhere in YouTube and you just type in crochet in the search bar, you are going to see their videos over and over and over again, because they have such a huge audience. And so they were two of the people definitely that I saw on YouTube that I watched and that I used as kind of tools and resources to learn. I followed a lot of their tutorials before I could read patterns and made a lot of their things. And that just fascinates me too, just the way that their minds are able to work, where they can just create patterns just so quickly. I'm super jealous of it. It takes me a lot before I'm able to actually design something and make it and put it on paper, sometimes months. And it seems like they come out with new patterns every single week. I'm like, I wish my mind worked like that. I know Crystal has something like 800 or something now, and I can't even.
Oh, tutorials, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like.
I remember when it was approaching, when it was like in the 650s, and I was going, what is she gonna do with number 666?
Yeah, how funny is that?
I don't know whether there actually is a number 666, because like elevators don't go to the 13th floor. But yeah, that was, yeah, the both of them were just as with you, just extremely influential when I started. Yeah. So you've done quite a number of designs in your time.
Yeah,
Tell us about those.
it's been okay. I've done a few. I've got a couple coming out this year. Last year was an interesting year for everybody, and so I had kind of a backseat in the design world. I only released one design last year, but like I said, I've got a couple that I've been working on that I'm hoping to release this fall. I started out. My very first design was a scarf, and so I was in a musical called The Day Before Christmas, and I played Jack Frost. And I wanted to design something that kind of fit the theme. And I was like, okay, well, I'm crocheting now. Everything's cold and like icy and wintry. So I wanted to make a scarf for my costume. But then I decided I was going to try my hand at designing. And so that was my first design I ended up doing.
Mm.
And that was in 2018. 2018, I believe. It could have been 2019. I honestly don't remember. Because I know I haven't been designing too terribly long. And then I was um, approached by Hobium, a yarn company in Turkey, I think they are, about using some of their yarn to design a pattern for their website. And so I ended up designing for them. And that was really cool because it was like one of those times where, oh, I'm getting noticed by, these big like box stores or these big like online stores. And, that was whenever it first started kind of hitting me that, oh, well, people are kind of taking notice and this is kind of neat. This is really interesting. Um, so I've done a few. Like I said, I've got a couple more coming out this year, but I like the process of it. Um, like we've said, it's very therapeutic for me to be able, I like to do things with my hands anyway. So whenever I'm creating something, um, I feel a really strong emotional connection to it. So I'm like, oh, this is like coming from me. And I always get super nervous before I do like a release or a launch or anything like that. Cause I'm like, are people going to actually buy this? Are they going to actually want to make this? And that was really cool about my last one that I released in 2020 is because the response was fantastic. And I never expect that whenever I do anything on social media or anything with design. Um, I'm just like, okay, well, I hope people like it. I'm not going into it like, oh, I'm going to sell so many of these or, oh, this is going to be fantastic. Like people are going to love it. They're going to talk about it and make everything. And so it's really nice whenever things are well received. And so it kind of helps whenever you're new starting out and you see the support that you get to kind of keep you going. So hopefully design is something that I do a lot more of in the future. I would really like to engage in that a lot more. But
So, what would you say is your process when you design?
well, so it's interesting. I'm one of those people, like I can't just sit down and be like, I'm going to design a pattern. I take a lot of inspiration from either just things around me in my daily life, or sometimes I'll have really random dreams and I will use that as inspiration, or I will think about certain things, kind of like with the musical that I was in. I'll use like other forms of art to kind of influence how I will create or design something. And so I'm one of those people that I will go through and I will make or create the design. So I will actually make the pattern or the project, whatever it is, first. Because I'll go through and I'll try a million different things as far as like stitches or counts or how I want to do this or what kind of shape I want to end up with for my end result. And then I will go back through and I will make it again, but then go through and actually write it while I'm making it the second time, just to make sure that I did everything properly or the way that I like it. Because there have been times on a couple of them where I've gone through the second time and I was like, I don't think I like that. I want to change it. And it's been honestly the hang up of a few different ones. So I've probably got 5 or 6 different designs that I have done that I have not released because I'm just so critical of myself, I guess, and I need to work on that. But I'm just like, okay, I think I can do things a little bit differently or make it sound easier in the pattern, or I can make this look better if I do something different. And so there's lots of things that I try to tweak along the way. And then I have testers. I have a nice group of testers that I typically use for my designs and go through that whole process. And then usually we'll launch a couple weeks after everybody finishes testing, just to make sure work everything out as far as like tech editing and if there's problems with stitch counts or people had issues during that whole process. But yeah, so just a lot of different things that can kind of influence whatever mood I'm in.
So, what do you like to design the most, or is it whatever
I've
strikes your
actually
fancy?
designed well, and so I try not to do too many of the same thing. Like right now, I haven't like repeated any type of like things. Like I have a scarf, I have a cowl, I have a shawl, I've got a wrap. I have another cowl coming out, like I said, this fall, and another shawl. I like shawls. I know a lot of men who will not wear shawls, which I guess I don't know. I design with everybody in mind, and so that's one of the things that I try to stay true to with all of my designs is that they're androgynous. I don't want to do anything specifically for male or female because I've had such a struggle whenever I was learning, finding patterns solely geared towards men. For whatever thing it may be, I like to keep things just unisex. It makes it easier, I guess. And so I'll try to design with that in mind. I prefer to design shawls though because I like them. I like to wear them personally,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I just think there's more. I don't know, more room, more space to be creative with it, just because they're larger. Um, so I think it's fun. But like I said, I wear a shawl. I know a lot of people won't, and I will say almost all of the people that make my patterns have been women, but also I'm hoping that more men are getting involved in the craft and they're willing to do something or try something new like that.
Well, have you found, even in the time that you've been doing it, that there are more and more men doing yarn?
hmm I think it's growing so much, and that's what I really like about it. Is that I think people are seeing it and they're kind of tearing down that stigma that this isn't something that men should be doing. Um, I still get people in my own life that are like, why do you crochet? Or that it's a grandma type hobby. I've had people that actually call me grandma before, or men
Well, I
don't.
had that before I picked up the hook, so that's not a
Yeah.
big deal.
But yeah, that was one of the things that I got a lot of whenever I first started was people
Yeah.
saying, "Well, that's not something that guys really do."
But
And
it's interesting. I have observed, and I'm in no way a social scientist or any kind of a scientist, but it seems to me that uh, yarn crafts, both knitting and crocheting, are among those things that um, when they started becoming professional things, men were doing them. And then when they became boring and drudgery, it was handed off to women.
Mhm,
And then now that they're becoming more exciting, everybody wants to do them.
mhm.
Do you think that that is valid?
I think, yeah, I think it helps too. Like you said, with things getting more exciting, I think people get more invested or involved in things whenever it seems like there's more excitement or attention around
Mm-hmm.
it. People kind of want to get involved more whenever it seems like it's fun. The shift in crochet and knit, whether it's like designs or the patterns or the things that people are making, has changed so much just by the way that things look. And I think that that is something that is really appealing to a lot of people. Um, a lot of individuals that I've ever talked to, whenever they think about crochet, it's like they instinctively think about like granny squares or Afghans. And it's like that's the only thing they can kind of picture in their head. They can't get past that. They think it's like, okay, like 60s, 70s style stuff. And all you're gonna do is like make blankets, and it's these really old school type things with like the chevron patterns and the granny square, which
Mm.
is great. And I love that. I love whenever people are able to do that still and make the retro designs and the colors, and I think it's really cool and it's like true to what it is. But I think with a lot of the way that people are designing now, it can be more appealing to others who don't necessarily like the traditional look of knit or crochet. And that was something that appealed to me, not because I don't like the traditional look, but I like whenever things are able to just be made differently. Um, And I think that it's really interesting. It's really cool. And it's drawn me to different types of patterns and different types of design.
Hmm.
Because whenever I first started, I didn't realize that that was, even an option. I didn't know too much about like stitches and the way that things worked whenever it came to pattern designs or things like garments. Like I've made garments that um, I have people confused for knitting all the time because of the stitches and the way that they look. They think crochet is like these giant stitches and there's just like gaps and holes and everything. And like, how could you possibly make, a sweater or blanket or something like that that
Or
is
they
going to
think
be
it's laced
functional?
doilies, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah.
that's what they think of. And that just causes me anxiety whenever I see those because I don't know if I'll
Mm.
ever be able to make something like that with like thread.
I would love to give that a try
Ooh,
at some
I
point in the
have lace
future.
crochet
Yeah.
hooks, but they're still in the package.
Exactly, exactly. In fact, I have some beautiful fingering weight yarn
Mhm,
that I've talked about many times
mhm,
because it's just so beautiful.
mhm.
And so what I'm doing is just holding on to it and listening, waiting for the yarn to tell me what I should make with it.
I love that. I have a hard time with a lot of the yarn like that too. And I think I'm a little bit odd whenever it comes to crocheting. A lot of the crocheters I know don't prefer to work with the smaller yarns, but I prefer fingering weight and DK weight over anything else whenever I'm making anything. Um,
It took me some time. I used to
mhm,
say um, that I was a dyed in the wool, so to speak, worsted boy,
mhm,
but I have really come to love DK,
mhm,
and I can see my preferences leaning lighter and lighter,
mhm.
and never really cared for anything larger than a 5 weight.
Yeah, bulky weight wasn't something, and I guess like just texturally, I don't know. Like I'm not a fan of things like blanket yarns or like whenever people use roving to just like crochet with. And I don't know, like I'm not knocking anybody's craft. It's not something that I feel drawn to. I like the drape and the feel that I can get from making something in fingering weight or even DK weight because it has a nice drape, but it's also got some density to it. Um,
Hmm.
because whenever I started venturing more into like crochet garments and I love making sweaters, I definitely wanted them to not be like stiff. And I found that whenever I would make different things like that, especially when you're trying to use really tight stitches to prevent things like holes or gaps or whatever it may be, and you're using like a worsted weight yarn, it's difficult for it to not be so stiff or so heavy, depending on, I guess, the fiber content that you've got too. But I really like those smaller weights.
So, is there any kind of an article or any kind of a technique that you've tried and you've had enough and don't really need to do it again?
Oh gosh. Let's see. I
I
don't
used to
know.
ask this when I was doing interviews with opera singers, and I
Uh-huh.
would say, "Are there any roles that you just don't need to do anymore?"
Well, and I don't know that there's any type of like stitch or anything that I don't like or that I've had, necessarily like trouble with. Um, I don't know. Like I think I'm in that phase now where I definitely prefer making things like sweaters and shawls, rather than like really smaller objects. But I don't know as far as like stitches or things, if there's anything that I'm just like over. Um, I don't know. I'm pretty open minded with a lot of that kind of stuff.
Have you done much Tunisian?
I've actually never done Tunisian, and so that is something that I would like to learn. Another one, Tony, on she's got her
Oh
TL
yes, I
yarn
I
crafts.
know who
Yeah.
you mean. Yeah, TL Yarn
And
Crafts. Yeah,
yes, I know she's got tons of tutorials, and I follow her on
that's where I learned. Yeah.
Instagram, and we've done a live together with Lion Brand. And I just think she's fascinating to me too. Another one of those designers that is just really, really neat. I love the look of Tunisian. And I used to always say, because whenever I first saw it, I was still very new to crochet, and I was like, I want to learn as much as what I can just using traditional crochet before I try to like branch out and do different things. And it's just something that I haven't done yet, but hopefully I'll get into it. Kind of like knitting. I would like to learn that at some point too.
Knitting is a mystery to me, and
It's beautiful.
I'm okay leaving it that way.
I can't do it. Yeah, I don't know what
I think there's still enough to learn with crochet that I haven't done yet. So
yeah, there's so much that I could continue to do with that. I know the couple of times that I've tried to knit, it has ended in me just using profanity, and so I'm like, maybe not for me right now.
gosh, I never use bad language when I have yarn in my hands.
What kills me though is that I'm a perfectionist, and so whenever I try to learn something new, I expect myself to be able to get it and to understand it very
And to
quickly.
do it perfectly the first time?
Yes, and I can't with knitting. I will say whenever I first started crochet, I felt like I was pretty good at it. Like I kind of got the hang of it very quickly. But with knitting, it would not click. And my husband, um, who is definitely more of like a sewer, quilter, fabric type person, I finally convinced him to tried to learn how to knit. I tried to teach him how to crochet, and it was just something that was going to end in shouting. So he started watching YouTube tutorials on knitting, and he picked it up almost instantly. And it kind of infuriated me because in like 20 minutes, he was better than anything I had tried for hours and hours and hours, several different attempts. And I was like, okay, well, I guess it just clicks for some people.
Oops. That's what it was with my ex. I actually I bought him a beginner's kit one year at Christmas because he had another hobby that I wanted him to sort of forget. And very quickly he became very, very good. So
Yeah.
I got him into knitting, and then he got me back into crocheting.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
then we were a bi-stitchual couple.
There you go. I do like having someone that can sew though, because I never have to buy project bags. Bradley makes all of my project bags for me,
Oh,
and
lovely.
I know that's so nice.
And if you actually crochet like market bags or anything like that, he can line them for you.
Yes, true. Although he does get kind of annoyed because for a while on my channel, we sold project bags, and so I would have people just kind of like emailing and messaging, and we would do it through that. But it got to a point where he was making dozens in a week, and he was getting very tired of it. He grew,
that's too
very
much.
old, so we kind of scaled back on that. Because it was kind of like a hobby. And what had happened is I talked about a couple of the ones that he had made on my YouTube channel, and I had like an influx of people that were like, oh, does your husband sell these? And so I ended up asking him like, hey, would you be interested in selling these? And he's like, sure, I guess I can. But then I think after one video that I posted, I got something like 40 different messages from people asking, because we did like a made to order type thing. It's not like we have inventory. And he was like, don't talk about my bags on your channel anymore. So
yeah, it can get overwhelming. Yeah.
No, I fully understood. So I was like, okay, you can just make them for me now.
Yeah. Well, that also leads into the question, what about your own crochet output? Do you sell it? Do you donate it? Do you give it away?
Kind of all of the above. It was very interesting. Whenever I first started, I started making a lot of things to sell. We have what's called a handmade market here in my town that our art center puts on, and they do that twice a year. And so I would make different items like scarves and hats and shawls, maybe a couple blankets, and I would go and I would sell the items. But then I don't know, I became a little bit more selfish as time went on. And I was like, I'm only making things to sell, and I'm not making things for myself. Or I would see things that like I wanted to make for myself, and I'm like, oh, I don't have time for that because I've got to get ready for this market. I've got to make, 30 hats in the next week and a half, or I've got to do this. And so it was, I don't know, kind of robbing me of like my joy of crochet. And it started to become more like a chore or a job. And I was like, that's not what I wanted to do. So I haven't done markets in the past couple of years. But I have been really involved with Hat Not Hate through Lion Brand last year and this year, making hats for them. And so definitely doing that again so I can donate to the cause, because I think it's such a great message that they're able to do.
Have you heard about my Hat Not Hate project?
What is your Hat Not Hate project?
Well, allow me to
Tell
tell
me.
you. I am inviting subscribers to my
Mhm.
channel to guess how many hats I will complete by July 21st,
Okay.
and also how much blue yarn I will have left over. And there will be prizes.
Oh,
And there will also be a marathon live stream, because that should also coincide roughly with about the time that I have, if all goes well, that I become monetized. So it should be a big party with lots
that
of
would be
champagne.
fun.
You know, it
Yes,
doesn't take
I
much
have
for
a
me to like.
personal goal for this year, so I hope that I'm able to reach that, but I'm pretty close. So I might actually be able to pass it, but I cannot remember the actual date for when everything has to be sent in. I
For
think,
Hat Not Hate, the deadline is August 1st.
okay, I was going to say, I think last year it was August. But last year I did 20, and so I wanted to do more than 20 this year. And I have over 20 already, but my goal for this year was 30, and so I think I'll be able to do that. Um, Crochet is quite a bit faster. I know a lot of people that are knitting,
Hmm.
um, and crochet is very quick.
But a lot of people have started using those crank knitting
Yes, I
machines,
know.
and they can turn them out like a mile a minute.
So fast, yeah. And I thought I was doing good so there's a certain pattern that I like because I've got it memorized now. And so it's the one that I use for all of these different hats. I just like the way it looks too. But it takes me about 2.5 hours to do one hat start to finish. And so I'm like, oh, it's not bad. So I can just kind of knock one out, one or two
Yeah,
out a night, depending on how much time I've got.
I have a bunch of free hat patterns on my blog,
Hmm.
and I make all of my hat patterns free, for just because of this, just to
Oh, that's
encourage
awesome. Yeah, I love
to
that.
have not hate on other causes. Um, my other patterns are not free.
That's okay. None of my patterns are.
No, no, no.
uh, I
Although
have
actually,
tried to design hats and I can't do it. I don't understand. I just don't grasp the head shape or what or the sizing. But whenever I try to design my own, they never turn out right, and it just looks.
oh,
But I can follow a pattern very well. But,
okay. Well, take a look at my blog
but
and
I cannot create my own hat pattern.
see what I've got there. You might like some of my patterns. I
I'll
would
have
be
to look.
honored if you would do one or two of my patterns.
I would love to. I think it would be
Yeah.
great.
But again, I'm talking about myself, which
That's
is
okay.
not should not surprise anyone who knows me, actually. But yeah, so outside of the yarn world, you're pretty young, but have accomplished a lot.
I try.
Yeah.
I try to keep myself busy and I try to be involved in a lot of things until the point that I stress myself out and then I start to scale back. But I do dabble in a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
I
I
like to.
mean, as long as I've known you, you've been into running
Hmm.
and you've been doing marathons,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That,
I'm
that
actually
just,
planning for another one right now.
wow, that
Yeah.
just amazes me.
Whew,
I mean,
thankfully it's in November, so it's going to be cool outside.
well, the only time I ever run, it's to the dinner table.
That's okay. I love
Um,
that too. So this will be my fourth marathon. It was supposed to happen in March, um, but COVID, of course, it kind of squashed it. Um, and it's given me a little bit more time to prepare for it, so that's not too bad. I've done the Little Rock Marathon that takes place in Arkansas. I've done that one twice, and I have done the full or the half once, and I've done a full marathon in Texas. And so I'm training for the Little Rock one again, but they have rescheduled it to November. And so, like I said, it'll give me a few more months to really train and get ready for it, but it's going to be so much nicer because it won't be hot. Because it doesn't sound like it, but even in March in South Arkansas, we're already approaching temperatures in the 80s in March. And so it's just not very comfortable running for 4.5 hours in the heat.
I've lived in Dallas, and
Oh yeah,
and now I
even
live in
on training.
southeastern
Yeah,
North Carolina, so I know a little bit about southern weather. Yeah.
I usually don't even go now until around 8 or 9 o'clock at night, because right now it is, I don't know, probably around 7:30, 7:40, 8 o'clock around here, and it's still in the 90s right now. Like, it's hot.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't checked what the weather is here today, but I'm sure it didn't get into the 90s.
Yeah. Oh, we got over 100 today. At this point in South Arkansas, I say usually around June to September, beginning of September, we will hit high 90s or 100 or more every day. It's unbearable sometimes, but
I can well imagine.
yes, I've grown up my whole life in the South, so I'm kind of used to it, I guess, but it still just seems rude every summer whenever it gets here.
Rude, yeah.
It is.
It's funny
hateful.
because
I don't understand.
I've lived in several different regions of the country. I can remember one time going to like it was a training program when I was in school. I went to the Twin Cities and I was saying, "Oh, I like it here." And a native said, "Oh, but it gets so humid there." And at the time I was living in South Florida and I just laughed in her face.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, oh, you have no idea. I wish we get more cold here, though. I know what was this year? This past February, I think it was February, yeah.
Oh, when that
Yeah.
horrible cold
Our
spell.
snow apocalypse that we had. So we got a foot of snow here in my tiny little South Arkansas town. But what was crazy about it is that that was the most snow that we had gotten in over a century in this part of the state, because it just doesn't happen. I tell people all the time, normally in November, December, we might see the 50s. There's plenty of times where I'm wearing shorts and a tank top on Christmas because it is almost warm outside. So for us to get snow, especially in almost springtime, it was crazy because we're not equipped for that at all. So we
I'm
got 1 foot of
sure.
snow, and this whole region of the state like shut down. I have a
Did
pretty
lots
long.
of people lose power?
Oh yeah, a lot of people did. A lot of people in Texas did. In Arkansas, we did like the scheduled like rolling kind of blackouts where different areas of town would be out, but like we don't have, like salt trucks or anybody that can like clean the roads off. And so you just had to wait for it to melt. And I commute an hour to work one way. And so whenever we got a foot of snow overnight at my house, I couldn't leave my house for a week. So I wasn't able to go to work or anything like that. And it
Mm.
seemed ridiculous, especially to people who get like feet of snow during the winter time. They're like, oh, you only got a foot of snow. And I was like, but you don't understand. Like, and it just took forever to melt. And then it would start to ice over because it would get cold at night. And nobody knows how to drive anyway down here. And so whenever you add ice to the equation, it was just a mess. But we made it through it, thankfully.
Yeah,
Woo.
I mean, this is totally off topic, but I've heard about a lot of class action lawsuits with the power companies because, I mean, the demand during that time was nothing near the demand that they meet in summer peak times, but they still were not prepared and should have
No.
been.
Well, and Texas is having problems again with the heat too, and all their energy problems because of the air conditioning and people trying to keep cool. It's kind of a nightmare, but I hope they get all that situated.
Yeah,
Um, It was
Well,
almost laughable though, seeing some of the things that they were putting out onto social media, like telling people to turn their thermostats up to like 82 whenever they were going to sleep at night. And I'm like, I don't know if you know this, but the humidity and being in the 90s all day and then trying to sleep whenever your air's not on. I don't know a lot of people that are going
no,
to do
yeah,
that. We have
exactly.
central heat and air here. And so
Of
my
course.
air conditioner is on almost year round. We hardly ever use the heat. We have a gas fireplace. If it gets too terribly cold, we'll turn that on. Um, but my house usually stays on like 68 degrees.
Yeah, yeah,
I like it cold.
yeah. Well, I I live with my sister in our late mother's house, and she
Mhm.
controls the thermostat, and
Oh,
she likes it very cold.
uh-huh.
Um, in the summer, I sleep under a blanket,
Mm,
but she likes it warm in the winter, so that's not so bad.
that's nice. Yeah. Nobody
Uh,
worries.
we've been at it for quite some time now. What would you like to tell our viewers? What would you like to leave them with?
Oh gosh. Let's see. I always tell everybody, whether it's patients or friends or family members, that whatever you're doing or whatever you're going into, try to keep an open mind about each situation because you never know what you're going to gain from that experience. I'm definitely one of those people that try to look at experiences as like learning experiences and not necessarily just good or bad. Um, I'm kind of like a hopeless optimistic whenever it comes to different things. I always want people to try to, like I said, just gain something from whatever they're doing. And hopefully that makes it a little bit more bearable or something that they can look back fondly on. But just try to be open minded with whatever you're trying or you're experiencing because you might really love it. You might learn something new about yourself.
I think that's lovely. And actually, when I watch your podcasts, you always close with a thought like that.
I try
I,
to keep some sort of mental health commentary or little tidbits in there because I do like to remind people that this is a big part of why I continue to do this and why I continue to crochet because I've seen how well it has worked for me. And I've talked to people who use it as therapy. I know Josh talked about it whenever y'all did y'all's session on here. And like I said, he's very vocal about it online.
mm-hmm.
It is such a healthy outlet for so many people who have maybe turned to other things that were not the best for them first, and then realizing that this is something that can really benefit them. And I think it's fascinating that we're able to use this as something that can really put us in a better mindset.
And he did say actually that once he started doing this, that he stopped making poor decisions.
I know. I think it's good. It is almost like a trance. We talked about meditation or like people's prayer, but it
Mm-hmm.
really is. And that's what I like so much about it is that it's just something that pulls you in and it takes your attention and it takes your focus. And you're able to just put all of that energy into whatever you're making.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully feel proud of yourself at the end whenever you get to look back at what you did and
Mm-hmm.
see kind of the fruits of your labor. And I love that.
I'm sure you know this from your background, from your studies. I read a long time ago something about this thing about finding that space where you're like totally focused. And I
Mhm.
think the article talked about the specific kind of brain waves that are emitted when you're in that space. I think it was called theta waves.
Okay.
And the more you can do that, the better off you are.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of us find that when we're working with yarn.
Mhm.
I used to find it back in the day when I was like on the piano bench.
Oh, yeah.
It's it's something we should all find.
Yes, and I hope that everyone does finds that thing that, gives them that sort of feeling or that peace or that comfort because it's fascinating whenever it clicks with you. Even
Hmm.
as a therapist, this is not something that I thought I would look back on and say, oh, this is kind of like my own personal form of therapy. But I even encourage my patients to, knit or crochet or do something like that. Because of the success that I've seen with so many other people. And I've actually had patients from the hospital that I work in that have told me that they picked it up and they have been able to tell a big difference in themselves over time, which
You know, I once met an art therapist
mhm,
who, and I've told this story before, who told me that she would teach crochet to like these at-risk youth.
mhm,
Um, and some of the toughest boys would be so proud of the hats that they
mhm.
made.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that so much. Um, I had a good experience whenever I was able to work with some of the patients in the hospital during it. Um, Because again, it's almost like a self-esteem boost too, whenever you're teaching somebody something new, and it clicks with them, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I can get this. I got it." And so we did that. We call it recreation therapy, but like art therapy in the hospital that I work in, and that was one of the things that we did with them was crochet, and I really enjoyed seeing everybody's reaction because all the women were usually like on board. They're like, okay, I'll try this. And it was usually the men that were very apprehensive and they're like, I'm
Hmm.
not going to do that. And I'm like, no, just give it a chance and you will see. And I don't think I had anybody that had like a negative experience doing that because even if they didn't really get it or, it took them a while, they had fun doing it or learning about it. And that's really, what we hope that people gain from, trying
Hmm.
like this is that you're just going to have a good time and that you're going to enjoy yourself.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, exactly. And
mhm,
you know, I've been in art therapy experiences where, you know, even though it wasn't with yarn, it was pretty darn nice.
mhm,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for
thank
coming
you.
and doing this interview with me. I think it's wonderful and very kind of you to do this. And
Oh,
I also want to thank all of our viewers who have been watching us for this whole time. And of course, I will add all the standard, you know, like, subscribe, comment, share, you know,
all
the
of it.
standard YouTube
All
crap,
of it.
you know, and all of that. Keep coming back. And I'm going to click the end.